Whether at home or work, life is about relationships. Welcome to Small Change, Big Dividends with your host, Branch Isole. Small Change, Big Dividends shares steps, tools, and tips for personal career and spiritual growth. So please welcome the host of Small Change, Big Dividends, Branch Isole.
A man walks into a bar and asks the bartender, "If I show you something amazing, can I get a free drink?" The bartender says, "Well, I'll have to see." The man says, "All right, sir." He reaches down into his bag, pulls out a miniature piano, sets that on top of the bar, reaches back down again, pulls out a little bench, puts the bench in front of the piano, reaches down a third time, pulls out a gerbil, sits the gerbil on the bench, and the gerbil starts to play Swanee on the piano. The gerbil gets finished, and the man says, "Well, what do you think?" The bartender says, "Well, that's pretty good, but I'm going to have to see more." The man says, "All right, sir." Reaches back into his bag again, pulls out a bullfrog, sits the bullfrog next to the piano. The gerbil starts to play Old Man River, and the bullfrog starts to sing. "Old Man River, that old man river, he don't do nothing, he just keeps rolling along." Man says, "Well, what do you think?" Bartender says, "I'll get you that drink." Now, while all of this has been unfolding, there's a guy at the end of the bar who's been watching. He jumps off his bar stool, runs down, slaps $300 on top of the bar, and says to the guy, "I'll give you $300 for that bullfrog right now." Guy looks at the money, looks at the bullfrog, and says, "Well, I thank you, friend, but I don't think so." Guy reaches into a pocket, pulls out $200 more, slaps that on top of the bar, and says, $500. I'll give you $500 for that bullfrog right now. Guy looks at the money, and he looks at the bullfrog, and he looks at the money again. He says, "All right, sir, you got yourself a deal." Guy grabs the bullfrog, runs out of the bar. Just about that time, the bartender comes back with the guy's drink, puts it on the top of the bar, and says, "None of my business, friend, but I don't think that was a very good deal." Guy picks up the drink and says to the bartender, "Don't worry, friend. The gerbil's a ventriloquist." Now, this story tells us two important things today. First, things are not always as they appear. And second, a small change can pay a big dividend. Coming to you from deep in the forest, near the banks of the Ouachita River, this is Small Changes, Big Dividends on the Bold Brave TV and Talk Global Network. I'm your host, Branch Isole, and you are my featured guest. Small Changes, Big Dividend is a call-in show where your questions are part of the program. So if you have a question, call me at 1-866-451-1451. And thanks for joining me today. Welcome to our first show. Today's topic is change your response, improve your relationship. On Small Changes, Big Dividends, we talk about personal, career, and spiritual Christianity essentials for growth-filled living. Each week, I'll be sharing my na'o with listeners from around the world. Today, I'm going to give you two small changes that can pay big dividends in your relationships and in your life. Because life is about relationships, but it's healthy relationships that encourage and embrace growth. The question is not, do people want better relationships? Of course they do. The question is, are they willing to change how they respond to have, build, and keep those better relationships? Sadly, for many, the answer is no. Why? Because change threatens our old pattern responses. Now, what's an old pattern response? It's the response or comeback we often use without thinking when our partner or spouse or significant other, perhaps a teenager or even a coworker, says or does something that sets us off. Now, you know what I mean. I'm talking about the issue. Let me give you an example. You and your spouse or significant other go to a party, a family function, a social gathering, maybe even a business event. And while driving there, the issue comes up. What happens? By the time you arrive, one or perhaps both are frustrated, angry, even mad. And what happens at the party? Perhaps one or both overindulge, say something offensive, do something embarrassing. The question is why? To prove a point? To get back at your partner? To be in control? This behavior is not part of a loving relationship. And whether in private or public, our responses often reflect our relationship health, both to us and to the outside world. But what's even worse is many justify their responses with statements like, well, I've always been this way. Really? That's how you acted when you first met? That's how you responded when you were dating? That's how you behaved when you were courting? I don't think so. So here's today's first small change. The easiest behavior to learn and practice is a new response. Why? Because no matter the situation, before we respond, before we react, before we ever say a word, we must have first had that thought in mind, that specific response. We mentally register that response literally at the speed of thought, before we ever vocalize it, before we ever act on it. We always have the thought first of how we will respond or react. We never respond by not having first had that thought, those words, or those actions. So, the next time your issue comes up, before you say anything, before you respond, I want you to stop. I want you to mentally pause and say to yourself, don't demean. Or tell yourself, respond respectfully. And then answer with a new response. Now, you may be saying, Branch, what should I say? What should my new response be? The answer is whatever your heart's desire, as long as it's not negative. When I started to learn this process, I had no idea what my new response would be. Then I remembered a Seinfeld episode. Perhaps you saw this one. Elaine and George go to dinner with one of Elaine's friends and her husband. And during the dinner, the friend sneezes. There's this pregnant pause, and George says, God bless you. And that sets up the entire plot for the episode. So by the end of the episode, whenever Jerry or Elaine or George are in a situation where they find themselves at a loss for words and not knowing how to respond, they simply say, you are so good looking. So when I started to learn and use this new response process, that's what I would say to myself before responding. I'd say, you are so good looking. It would give me that moment's pause I needed to formulate a respectful response. So, before you say anything, before you respond, I want you to stop. Take a moment, think of a respectful response, and then answer. Now, we're going to take our first commercial break, but when we return, I'm going to share what the power of a new response can mean in your life. You're listening to Small Changes, Big Dividends on the Bold Brave TV and Talk Global Network. I'm your host, Branch Isole. We'll be right back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them. Rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies. Find settings that allow them to be the most productive and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Welcome back. You're listening to Small Changes, Big Dividends on the Bold Brave TV and Talk Global Network. I'm your host, Branch Isole, and today we're discussing small changes you can start using immediately after hearing this episode to improve your relationship health at home or work. Viktor Frankl, the author of Man's Search for Meaning, stated it this way: between stimulus and response, there's a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Here's why growth and freedom of a new response is so powerful. It can redefine, reinvent, or replace old pattern behaviors. And the more you use a new response, the easier and more natural it becomes. So the next time you're tempted to spit fire with an automatic comeback, stop. Tell yourself, respond respectfully, and then answer. Now, why is a new response so important? Because old pattern behaviors with old pattern responses keep us stuck. They keep us chained. They keep us shackled in a downward spiral. With an old pattern response, nothing changes. We've used it before. They've heard it before. The result? No change. And the cycle of inappropriate responses continues, so there's no growth in the relationship. A new response can start improving any relationship. So stop, pause, think, then answer. Our second small change today centers on experiential growth. Now you may be asking, what is experiential growth? This is the growth that can happen in that space Viktor Frankl described, when we reduce the time between our response moment and our reconciliation moment, or the makeup moment that ends the argument, and the moving on part when the reconciliation begins. A typical old pattern behavior many use is the silent treatment. Maybe you know this one. The issue comes up, an impasse is hit, and one partner goes silent mode. Not responding, not interacting, not speaking. I knew a man once who used the silent treatment for up to 2 weeks at a time. This is not loving behavior, and it can be extremely hard on a relationship. A new response will dismantle both the issue and the old behavior we've been using. But be forewarned, deconstructing old pattern behaviors often reveal much about our own discontent. Now, what do I mean? You may find that the problem or issue in your relationship is actually about you. Behind the veil of offending behavior, it's often our issue, our baggage, our mental conflict that's on display, making excuses, blaming others, going into silent mode, or some other form of punishment toward our partner. Whatever that form of punishment may take, it's a place we choose to go. Let me say that again. It's our choice to behave this way. And although it may be part of my nature or the way I've always been, it's harmful for everyone involved. So why continue? Why go there? This path will only lead to unhappy bitterness. So here's our second takeaway for today. Growth takes place incrementally, meaning it's a step-by-step process that reduces the time between our responsive action and our reconciliation action. In our silent treatment example, a new learned and practiced response shortened the destructive nature of the situation every time. Our hero went from 2 weeks to 10 days to 5 days, and then to 4, 3, 2, and finally 1 day between his response and his reconciliation. That was excellent growth, but he kept working at it, and by the time his new response was fully formed, his reconciliation time was minimized. He was able to work through his frustration and anger more quickly as he identified his part of the issue. Did it take time? Yes. All behavioral change takes time. That's just a fact. Inappropriate patterns of behavior don't happen overnight, and they won't be changed overnight. Teaching an old dog a new trick takes time, patience, and love. And the same is true with us. Time, patience, and love are required. If you've ever known anyone who's battled addiction and used a 12-step program, then you know it takes time to change ingrained behaviors. Our 2-week man went from weeks to days to hours and finally to minutes. How? He identified his part of the issue. Is this process difficult? Well, it can be at first. But keep in mind, behaviors and responses are choices. If you want to change your life, you have to realize you're the one who has the power to do so. Your life, my life, every life is about the choices that we make. With every choice comes a consequence, an outcome, a reward, or a failure. The key question is, which outcome is in your best interest? Will incremental time reduction steps reveal areas that need work? Yes, they will. But growth always has challenges. Looking at the hard stuff, admitting it exists, and realizing how to get through it shows that incremental steps are the key. There's no skill or activity where you've said, I'm going to try this, and voila, you succeeded immediately. Every new response or attempt takes time and practice. And relationships are no different. When we accept challenges to grow, it takes a few times to get the template right. By recognizing you're part of the issue, you may discover at the core of your discord is you. When growth starts to take place, we realize it's not the action of others that makes us angry. It's being stuck in our old pattern behaviors. The actions of others may be a trigger, but our response, whatever it may be, whatever form it takes, is up to us. So the question becomes, are you willing to risk changing your old pattern responses and your old pattern behaviors for new respectful ones? Whatever form your punishment now takes, silent mode or something else, if reducing the time between your response and your reconciliation is incremental and consistent, growth occurs. Relationships improve, lives are changed. So the next time your issue comes up, don't demean, respond respectfully, and reflect on your part of the problem honestly. There you have it. New response, time reduction, taking responsibility. 3 keys for relationship growth. Start using these today for better relationships tomorrow. Now we're going to pause quickly for our second break. When we come back, I want to share what brought me here today to be with you. This is Small Changes, Big Dividends on the Bold Brave TV and Talk Global Network. I'm your host, Branch Isole. We'll be right back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Welcome back. You're listening to Small Changes, Big Dividends on the Bold Brave TV and Talk Global Network. I'm your host, Branch Isole. Whenever I do workshops, people in attendance always want to know one of three things. First, what's the answer? Second, what's the solution? And third, what are the results? So for those of you here today looking for the answer, here it is. Be prepared. Be prepared for success. Be prepared for failure. Be prepared for ups. Be prepared for downs. Be prepared for accolades. And be prepared for rejection. By being prepared for both sides of the coin and both sides of the argument, you'll be prepared to improve your chances and opportunities for success in every experience. You'll be prepared for both possible outcomes in each situation. Why? Well, there's always the possibility that the results will be in your favor. However, even the best made plans can go astray, particularly if we're unprepared or overconfident. Being prepared means having a plan that aligns with your expectations, but a plan built on past experiences of both success and failure. Contingency plans recognize the need to potentially alter or change if plan A gets derailed. If you're prepared for both sides of an outcome, no matter the result, there's growth in there somewhere. Now, for those folks who are here today seeking solutions, here's my invitation. Join me every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on the Bold Brave TV and Talk Global Network for tips, tools, and steps that will make your journey easier, your relationships more fulfilling, and your daily interactions more successful. And finally, for those seeking results, join me each week for key takeaways you can implement immediately in your life through a willingness to acknowledge the powers that you have within. Now, how did you and I get here today? Well, I'm an author. I write stories. But Small Changes, Big Dividends is a program about you and about your new story. Our episodes will not be about me, and while my story might be entertaining, my story is not your story. I don't know how you got here today, but I'm pleased and honored that you are, so thank you. Since this is our first show, I thought it might be respectful for you to know how I got here. As a poet and storyteller, I'm the author of 22 books. I write for adults. My stories, articles, and series reveal issues and emotions often experienced in adult life that are not always voiced. With appearances and guest spots on over 150 programs and podcasts, one of my most popular conversations is about prophetic end times and last days events. The producers at Bold Brave Media thought, now there's a topic that isn't covered in talk radio and podcasting world that might be of interest to audiences. So they invited me to start a show for you. Because many people have heard of the end times and the last days, yet know little about them. If you've ever seen a Hollywood movie about the rapture, the Antichrist, the second coming, you may know what these labels refer to, but do you know what they're actually about? How they'll occur? What they mean, or what they could mean to you and your family? If you'd like to know, stay tuned. We have shows planned that will explain the end times and last days. More importantly, I'll be pointing out events that are happening today in our daily news cycles that are setting the stage for these future events. Now, you've seen the Hollywood movies. Now you can learn the real backstories. Plus, you'll be able to ask questions. And when we're done, you'll know when the rapture will happen, who the Antichrist will be, and what the mark of the beast, 666, is really about. On Small Changes, Big Dividends, we'll be covering topics you're not going to hear anywhere else. So join me every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time right here on the Bold Brave TV network. Now, my engineer, Lieutenant Dan, tells me we've got our first call-in question from Jamie in South Carolina, and it's the perfect question for our first show. Each week, I'll answer questions from our listeners. So if you have a question, call me during the live shows, Wednesdays at 4 p.m., or you can email your question anytime during the week to branchesole.com. Use the box in the Meet the Author link. Now, Jamie asks, why are we here? Or, as it's often stated, what's the meaning of life? This question has been asked again and again throughout history by people in every age, from every nation, region, tribe, or land. It's certainly the number one question people wondered about across the globe throughout history. Why are we here? What's life's purpose? Perhaps you've asked this. I've certainly thought about it. Every life story, every life journey is a set of experiences seeking the meaning of truth and a search for love. We seek truth through the events and circumstances we experience in our daily life. We search for love with and through the people who come into our lives and who we make contact with while on our journey. Because the world is not an easy or equitable place, truth and love are the two structural pillars of life's purpose. The world tests, the world challenges, and the world tempts us to avoid truth, to abandon love, and instead to seek all we can acquire. The world's ways keep us focused on our needs, our wants, and our desires as we try to negotiate or fend off the stress, struggle, and pressure of daily living. In this way, every life is similar. So the real question is, why? Why are we here? I believe we're here to understand that there is a God and to acknowledge that He exists. Each life is an opportunity to come to know of God and then to know Him better by knowing Him deeper and more fully as we learn about His character and nature. Many have come to think of God as either all love or all punishment. If you've ever participated in organized religion, you've probably heard this statement: God is love. Or perhaps you've heard God is hell, fire, and brimstone. Well, He's neither, and He's both. God is like a loving parent who has unconditional love for all He's made. As the Creator, God loves all He's created, including each of us. He responds to those who recognize and call upon this parental love. And such, He responds like a loving parent, capable of forgiveness and capable of discipline. However, like every loving parent, He desires and expects His children to learn and grow through character-building exercises and experiences we call life, in order that they may become more truthful, more accepting, more tolerant, giving people. Think of it this way. God is like a parent who goes to the park with his children. There's other parents and children in the park, and God cares what might happen to all of those children. but he loves and protects his children because each of them has chosen to be one of his children. He's concerned with everyone in the park, but his first and foremost interests and efforts are for his own children. Those who recognize him, those who believe in him, and those who trust in him. The world gives us plenty of opportunities to write our own story. And in doing so, we are all like little Pinocchios off to see the world. The world encourages us to abandon our search for truth and love at the park, and instead embrace its glitter, glitz, and glam. Life for each of us is a dichotomous experience of continuing choices and decisions. But here's the truth. God doesn't need us for him to exist. And he doesn't need us to believe he exists for him to actually exist. Throughout the universe, God is omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient, meaning through his Spirit, he is everywhere. He is all-powerful and he is all-knowing because he's God. And because he is God, he doesn't need us for him to be. However, he does need us in order to be recognized as God. Now, when we come back from our commercial break, we're going to discuss what that means for each of us. You're listening to Small Changes, Big Dividends on the Bold Brave TV and Talk Radio Network. I'm your host, Branch Isole. We'll be right back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them. We discover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Welcome back. You're listening to Small Changes, Big Dividends on the Bold Brave TV and Talk Global Network. I'm your host, Branch Isole. We're answering a question from Jamie in South Carolina who asks, why are we here? Or what's the purpose of life? As I mentioned before, through his Spirit, God is everywhere. He's all-powerful and he's all-knowing. That's how he knows about us. Because he's God, he doesn't need us for him to be. However, he does need us in order to be recognized as God. Life's necessity for us is to exist and experience opportunities to come to know him and to know of him. For only life gives the possibility of knowing God. One of life's purposes for us is to experience and then express a relationship with Him. To know of God and to know who He might be, who He can be, and who He's willing to be for each of us. In one of our upcoming shows, I'll be sharing how anyone can start or restart a spiritual walk with God in 5 easy steps. So I'd like to thank Jamie for that question. If you have a question, call me during the live show or send your question by email anytime to branchisole.com. Use the box in the Meet the Link author. Next week, our conversation will be 7 steps you can use to repair damaged relationship. So if your relationship hits rough spots and you're not sure what to do, next week's show is for you. Thanks for joining me today on Small Changes, Big Dividends. We discuss personal, career, and spiritual Christianity essentials for growth-filled living. If you know someone who could benefit from today's episode, please share it with them. If today's show has been helpful for you, please give us a rating and review. And to know more about my work, I invite you to visit my website, branchisole.com, or my YouTube channel, Branch Isole. Today's show has been sponsored by Crystal Creek Farm. If you have a business, a product, or service you'd like to share with the world on Small Changes, Big Dividends, send your request to the website. You've been listening to Small Changes, Big Dividends on the Bold Brave TV and Talk Global Network. I'm your host, Branch Isole. Until next week, all the best.
This has been Small Change, Big Dividends. When you're ready for healthier, more successful relationships at home or work, Small Change, Big Dividends is your show. Wednesdays, 4 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.